Okay. Welcome, everybody. This is Pillow Schmooz we're going to have Efrat Mayor Oded Revivi joining us in a minute. I'm very excited. Oded Revivi is one of Israel's most impressive mayors. Juggles more than a regular mayor in a regular town does. He has Judea and Samaria issues that he deals with, along with other issues. Also, the de facto international spokesperson for Judea and Samaria, and that's what we'll be focusing most of our issues on tonight. Are going to be on Judea and Samaria issues, less so. I know everybody likes to talk about the coronavirus, but we're not going to be talking about the coronavirus as much. So we'll be talking more about Yehuda and Judea and Samaria issues, the Trump peace plan, and things of that nature. Oded Revivi has been a very outspoken advocate for the Trump peace plan, and that's not the most popular view out in the sticks out here in Judea and Samaria. So we're looking forward to discussing that with him. He wrote a number of op-eds. It seems like the Trump peace plan is almost as old as Oslo with coronavirus going on. But the truth is, it's very much a part of life here. The Trump peace plan, it might not be the first thing on people's head today. Might not be the top thing that people are thinking about, but the Trump peace plan has and the annexations that it promises of, let's go this way, Judea and Samaria, the green area here on my map, has a great chance of improving life here and definitely changing life here in a significant manner. So it's because of that I think it's so important that we discuss these issues and that we don't completely forget about them. It's very easy to just get so caught up in the minute-to-minute headlines, and that's really where the media is taking us, is to make sure that we're so caught up in the latest news and the numbers of how many people are catching it. But there are very significant issues to be dealing with in life today that do not relate to the sick count and the quarantine count. And in reality, these things are the counts. I'm talking about the counts are not the most important things in life. The most important things in life are staying healthy, being with our families. And there are a lot of other significant issues that we can think about that require our attention. And the future of the state of Israel and the future of the land of Israel are very important issues that really should be in the center of our focus and should be the things that we're discussing. So all too often we just get caught up in this 24-hour news cycle, and the things that we were so worried about yesterday are things that we can't even remember them today. And then there are issues like the safety and security of the people of Israel, the safety and security of this land, the integrity of this land, that are issues that are not going to go away, that are issues that are not part of the news cycle, and issues that we should never leave to the news cycle. So that's something that we really need to be concerned about and to really be thinking about all the time. And that's something that we really should be focused on. So it's good to take a step back to ignore the news, to be able to have a productive conversation with people, and to be able to investigate the issues that are going to be the ones that really shape our lives for forever. The makeup of the map behind me and the lines drawn on that map and the future of the people that live on that map, those are things that are going to affect us way past the next month and next 2-3 months. These are forever issues, and these are issues that don't get past and don't go away. And these are issues that are life and death, and also characterize the nature of our beloved state of Israel, and things that we really need to be thinking about. Even those that discuss these issues and frame them in sort of very immature ways of anti and pro, and are not really spending enough time taking deep dives into the issues here. And now we're joined by Mayor Revivi. So Oded, welcome.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
I hear you perfectly fine. You're wonderful. So it's great to have you. And listen, we I've been talking a couple of minutes. We started a little early without you. That's how I usually do it, about 5 minutes before giving a little introduction into you and the issues that we're going to be discussing. But I like to start off every show by making a bracha, not like a simple bracha, a shahakol. So I'm gonna make a bracha and give everybody a chance to answer amen together, and then we'll get started. So bracha to Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niyeh b'dvaro.
Amen. And like we Jews do, I'll answer you with a bracha. So Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niyeh b'dvaro.
Amen, amen. Good. I'm glad that you came well prepared. So Mayor Rivi, we were talking a little about you and about the issues that we're going to be discussing, and but I would love to start off. A lot of people know who you are, and a lot of people know you by the chance to hear you speak, but don't really get a chance to know who you are, your background, and how you got to this position. So I'd love if you'd start off by telling us a little about where your background, who you are, how you got here, what your current responsibilities are, the positions that you have, and give us a sense of really who we're talking to tonight.
So first of all, thank you for the invitation. It's really fascinating and refreshing dealing with everything that we hear in the news, to be in this social gathering with a cup of coffee and not worry about anything else, but just that the coffee is at the right temperature. I was brought up in Israel. I was with my parents twice on shlichut, once in the United States, in Englewood, New Jersey. And then a few years later, we went to shlichut to England. I was brought up in Jerusalem, did my military service in a tank unit. After 4.5 years, and my mother was extremely worried that I will stay in military service. And I ended up studying law in England, met my beloved wife in England. She was active in Bnei Akiva, and we met in one of the Bnei Akiva Shlichim Sukkah. She already had made her mind to make Aliyah to Israel. So I stayed in London studying law, and she moved over to Israel. We got married. She came back to spend the last year of my law school in England. And after we came back from England, we basically moved to Efrat. And that was 1994. I worked as a lawyer for 4 years. Then I opened my own practice as a lawyer for 8 years. And really minding my own business, not too much involved in the community. I was involved in 2 rounds of elections where somebody who was running for mayor asked me to help him. Either I didn't do a good enough job or he wasn't a good enough candidate, but he didn't get elected. The 3rd round comes around and my neighbors knock on my door and they say, Oded, it's time that you stand for office. And I say to them, listen, guys, I'm happy doing what I'm doing. I'm really not interested. Just leave me alone. We're on our way for a family holiday in England. Go to England 3 weeks. Weather amazing. That's an important issue when you go on holiday to England. Come back 3 weeks later, forgot about the knocking on the door. Somebody else knocks on the door and they say, Oded, we need to start working on the campaign. So I said, which campaign? They said, well, the election, it's the end of August, beginning of September. The elections are the end of November. We don't have a lot of time. We need to work on the campaign. So I said, but I never consented. But they said, well, it's a bit too late. We've actually started to spread the word around that you're running. We've started publishing flyers on behalf of your name. We suggest you cooperate. And sure enough, 18th of November 2008, I get elected to become the mayor of Efrat, not realizing what the responsibility holds, not realizing what the job is all about. And here we are already in my 3rd term as mayor. If I was dragging my feet in the 1st term, you can understand that the attitude is slightly changed. And I have to say that it's a fascinating position, a lot of responsibility. I think anybody who follows the news these days can just think what goes in the head of a mayor, knowing that there's another family where there's 1 person sick, maybe 2 people sick. How do you look after the kids? Who actually takes out the garbage or the rubbish? Depends from which part of the world you come from. Those are the challenges that we're dealing with these days. And we can carry on for a long time about what's going on in the city of Efrat.
Okay, and that's your job in Efrat. And what role do you play in the Council of Yehuda v'Shomron in Judea and Samaria?
So when I ran for mayor, I thought that my political views are really between me and the ballot whenever we get to vote. This year we got to vote 3 times, maybe we got to vote 4 times. But I honestly thought that the position of being a mayor is a position of running the city. I didn't think it will involve any politics. And some of the people asked me about my political views before I was running, and they didn't like the answer, and they decided not to support me. Others liked the answer and did support me. But the day after I get elected and I sit on the chair of the mayor, all of a sudden I understand that there is a lot of interest in why are you living in Judea and Samaria? What is the legal justification? How do you deal with international law? How do you practice day-to-day life? Why is life in Judea and Samaria, of the Jews in Judea and Samaria, not really creating an apartheid state? All sorts of different topics. And I started finding myself addressing more and more delegations, dignitaries, diplomats, reporters from all different parts of the world and from all different political spectrum of views, all which built up at the end of the day to a position that the Judea and Samaria Council, the Esha Council, thought that it would be right to have a person that holds the position of the chief foreign envoy to actually express the views of the people in Judea and Samaria. It started off with Danny Dayan, who currently serves as the general counsel in New York. And when he went abroad, he asked me to take over his position. And that's what I've been doing for the last 3 years. And I have to admit that the deal of the century, the Trump deal, rocked the boat a bit and caused some disturbance, because all of a sudden, what President Obama managed to do to the Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria, to put them all in one boat. He basically declared a building freeze on all the Jewish people in Judea and Samaria, and there was no differentiation between those who live in the blocks and those who live in isolated areas and those who live in regional councils opposed to cities. He basically put us all in one boat. And all of a sudden, when the deal of the century came to the table, these political arguments all of a sudden were aired out, are causing a very big discussion, or caused a very big discussion within the Judea and Samaria Council. Due to the elections, due to the coronavirus, these disputes have been put aside for a moment, but I can only guess that if the Trump deal will really go forward, we will see those arguments emerging again and causing some sort of split between the people who live in Judea and Samaria.
Okay, that's sounds like you have a lot of free time in your day.
Definitely. You see, the time is 10 o'clock. I'm still with my shirt, answering questions, and the night is young. So let's go. Let's see where it leads us to.
Okay, great. Okay, so you recently led other mayors of Judea and Samaria with Prime Minister Netanyahu to Washington to show support of the Trump peace plan. Why did you feel it was important to be there?
You have to understand that the whole trip of the Prime Minister wasn't something that was planned in advance, something that we knew that was going to happen in a month's time, in 2 months' time. I'm just reminding you, there was a very big event in Jerusalem Wednesday, where leaders from all over the world came to Yad Vashem to commemorate the Remembrance Day of the Holocaust. That was Wednesday. Amongst the dignitaries that came here was Vice President Pence. And almost towards the end of his visit, Wednesday night, he says to Prime Minister Netanyahu, President Trump would like to see you in the White House on Monday. Now, you know, even when you want to propose to some girl to come out on a date with you, usually there's more preparation than, hey, it's Wednesday night, what are you doing on Monday? Let's see you in DC. And that's more or less what happened. And when I heard that the Prime Minister was invited, and I heard the reasoning behind the invitation, I approached the Prime Minister's office and I said, listen, guys, you know, I think for your political standing, it makes sense that you bring representation of the Jewish people in Judea and Samaria. And they thought that was a good idea. I would dare say, one of the only mayors who was in touch with the American administration from day one. I was invited for the inauguration of President Trump. I was there in DC. When Jason Greenblatt came to Israel for his first visit on his official position as the chief envoy of the president, I was the one who was asked to brief him about the situation in Judea and Samaria. And since then, up until the presentation, I was in contact with the administration. So it only made sense that I would be the person who would join the prime minister. People in Judea and Samaria heard about it. So the chairman of the Judea and Samaria Council said, oh, that's a great idea, I'll join you. The mayor of the Binyamin Council, regional council, said, I'll join as well. And then we were joined by the Gush Etzion mayor. So all of a sudden, there was a whole delegation of 4 people who joined the prime minister. And the major idea behind the actual accompanying him was, I would say, 2 things. One is we understood that there was going to be a lot of interest by the international media and by the Israeli media as to what's happening in the White House. And because we were the ones that everything was being discussed about, we thought it would be appropriate that we'll be there and express our views. And also we got a very clear confirmation from the Prime Minister's office that we will be updated whilst we're still there. And those were the reasons that why we decided basically on Sunday lunchtime to take the first plane Sunday evening. And sure enough, the following day, we land in DC Monday, 10 o'clock in the morning. By 2 o'clock, we're already in the Blair House, the official residence of the guests of the White House. And we had already a meeting with the Prime Minister about what was going on there.
Okay, and you felt the trip was successful?
No, that's already a completely different question.
Let me put it this way: did you feel it was worthwhile for you to have gone?
Even that is a complicated question, and I'll tell you why. Okay. If I think to myself, what did I anticipate of a role of a mayor of a city of 13,000 people? When I was elected, it was 8,500 people in Judea and Samaria. I never dreamt that as part of my position as a mayor, I will find myself in a public debate with John Kerry twice on a public stage. I didn't anticipate that I would be asked to address the AIPAC Assembly. I didn't think that I will be the one who is briefing the American representative for the peace plan. Now, all these things happened as a mayor. And all of a sudden, you're in DC, when you understand that all the attention of the Israeli public, the international media, is focused on what's happening in Capitol Hill. And we were there, I think, for like 72 hours. It will be an unforgettable lifetime experience. Coming to DC with expectations that the Israeli law is going to be applied on the Jewish cities and towns in Judea and Samaria within 48 hours, a sense of history happening in DC. We got messages from people who live in Eili saying that what happened in DC is the equivalent of the 29th of November 1947. That was the level of excitement. And you're just a few steps away from the President of the United States. We met, whilst we were there, twice the Prime Minister of Israel. And whilst we fly back, we understand that we are on some roller coaster, that just as we were feeling that we are high, all of a sudden we're almost crashing into the ground and things are not going as anticipated. So to answer your question, it was a worthwhile journey because of the personal experience, because of the roller coaster that I took part in, a lesson in the Judea and Samaria Council organization politics, in Israeli politics, in the relationship between Israel and the United States. And all of a sudden, you understand that what you were witnessing is only one small move in major global international relationships between the United States and the Arab countries in the Gulf, that I can't say to you that as a mayor, I understood that I was playing part in that game. And now, gosh, I understand that we're key players in that game. And it's fascinating to follow. Sometimes it's frustrating to come back empty-handed, but it was definitely an unforgettable lesson.
Okay, great. Now, as some in Judea and Samaria and leaders of the people that live here were in opposition to the Trump peace plan, particularly because it promotes what looks like a two-state solution and a Palestinian state. You were not in opposition to the plan. You're an advocate. You wrote op-eds for the plan. You did a lot of media interviews saying that you were in favor of the plan. What led you to your conclusion to support the plan? And did the idea of creating a Palestinian state bother you?
You ask the question and you make it look as if it's extremely easy, extremely straightforward. And here's the question: just give us the answer and let's go to the next question.
Make it as short and yes or no as possible.
I was a supporter of the plan, and I still am a supporter of the plan. It is true that different people changed their views as time passed. Why? Because they understood different things. But the way I see it, and the way things were presented by the Prime Minister and by the American administration, there were things that Israel was going to get within the implementation of the plan that were extremely worthwhile, that were extremely historical, things that we've dreamt in the past, and we could have never anticipated that it will come so quickly and so easy. Some people were afraid of the potential of what will be at the end of the process. The way things were presented were that there's such a long list of conditions that only if the Palestinians basically turn themselves from wolves into sheep, then we will discuss those things which we're afraid of. I thought to myself, because we know that there's no potential that they will actually reach that situation, so why not start going down the path? Other people, because they were so afraid where the path will lead to, weren't willing even to go on the path. Now, after things became more clear and questions started to rise and difficulties started to come up, I still say I'm in support of the plan. Why? Because the way I see reality in Judea and Samaria is that the Jews are not going to go anywhere. Neither are the Arabs going to go anywhere. It is upon ourselves to try and find a mechanism by which we can live one alongside the other. If we won't be the ones who actually manage to establish some sort of framework that we can live one alongside the other, we will find ourselves having outside interference of people who know way less about the way we live, about the relationship we have with our Arab neighbors, about the potential of where this relationship can build up to, and will come up with something which is worse and won't be as sustainable. That's my theory. That's the way I try and approach it. If at the end of the day, the outcome will be that there will be a Palestinian state of Palestinian people who are not calling for the destruction of the state of Israel. They have no claims over Jerusalem. They're dropping any rights for a right of return. It means that it's a reality which we are not living today. We can't even imagine it. I don't think we need to be as afraid of it.
Okay, I tend to agree with you. I think that's that's it's a healthy way of looking at things, and I think it requires imagination and it requires faith. But most of all, I think, and this leads to my next question, it leads to a required trust in the Trump administration, that they're not trying to pull something over us, that this isn't something that they're trying to slip something by us. And the Trump administration has been in power for about 3.5 years. They're approaching their first and only re-election try. And the 8 years previous were not so positive for those of us in Judea and Samaria. The Obama administration wasn't in favor of us, didn't see us as beneficial to the area. What are some of the differences you've seen since the start of the Trump administration and the way the Trump administration has dealt with Judea and Samaria in particular?
You know, your question either is from a place that you think that your viewers are not living in the same planet that we're living, or you think let's just bore them with a boring question. You can't even compare.
Well, I want to tell you, no, but I think it's an important point that you make because as much as like what you and I are sitting here, and we've been friends for a couple of years, and our issues focus around the neighborhood that we live in, but it always shocks me and always surprises me how much we actually do live on a different planet than everybody else. So everybody has an imagination of what Yehuda V'Shomron looks like, and really has no idea what life is like here at all. So I think that you know, when we say something like that,
right.
Yeah, I think that you are on a different planet.
I'll answer your question in full depth, and you're right. Okay, I've been mayor since about, I think, just before President Obama was elected up until today. So I've been the mayor of Efrat throughout President Obama's term. The major line that Prime Minister Netanyahu kept on quoting, who also was elected very soon after President Obama was elected, every time he came back from the United States, was President Obama insists on not one more brick. That was the policy. We weren't allowed to build anything. It hasn't been a long period of time. It's 11 years, 11 and a half years. We forget how much did we suffer, how much did we struggle. We as mayors, we couldn't guarantee that we'll open kindergartens on the 1st of September because there was even a building freeze on building educational institutions. That was the level of intensity and worries that we had as local leaders to provide services for our residents. 3.5 years ago, completely against all odds, there's a surprise. There's a new guy in town who says all sorts of different things during his campaign. People say he won't stick to any one of his promises. That's what politicians are all about. He gets elected. As I said, I was in DC when he was during the ceremony of the inauguration. I heard him say, America first. Not all of Israelis understand that, but basically it means when there is a conflict of interest between the United States and Israel, he will take America first. But throughout the last 3.5 years, he hasn't stopped surprising the Israeli people how he kept to every single promise of his, okay? He promised to move the embassy, so he didn't do it in the first 6 months. He did it straight after. Everybody was shocked. They said, oh, we just didn't sign the waiver that we're extending it for another 6 months. Nothing will happen. The embassy was opened. He went and said that he recognizes the rights of Israel to have the Golan Heights, the sovereignty of the Israeli government over the Golan Heights. He expressed that. Then Secretary Pompeo comes out with a declaration that the settlements are not against the international law. Again, things that were never expressed before. So they said, oh, it was just a declaration. But sure enough, the State Department's protocols are being changed according to what the president has just announced. These are not just empty air statements. These are followed by policy. And then he comes with the Trump deal, where people started to ask questions all of a sudden. Now again, and especially after I was in DC, I understood more that the plan actually looks into the interest of also of the American people. It has behind it an interest of closing financial deals with the Gulf states, which will improve American finance. But there are also things that Israel is getting which we never got before. And we have no reason to doubt that the president is going to keep them. We know who are the people around the president. We've never had such a supportive, such a warm and understanding group of people surrounding an American president. And yet, even when that is the situation, we doubt and ask questions and are even willing to put at risk to say to the president, no. Why? Because you haven't given everything that we want. Now, that's the game of politics. You get what you can. You don't always get everything you want. And, you know, since then, we went into a third round of elections. We see that the mess has just even gotten bigger. We don't know who is going to be the next prime minister. I think you and I both share the same desire that the same person will be prime minister. But there's no guarantee at the moment because our candidate only has 58 members of Knesset. The other guy has 61 members of Knesset. Neither one of them are managing to create a government which gets a coalition of 61, even though Gantz, theoretically on the paper, and American viewers definitely don't understand this. How can you have 61 members of Knesset out of 120 and still not have a majority? Because those 61 are not really bonded together. Within them, they have different ideas, there are different ideologies. There are some
even members even within Kachol Lavan, you have different,
Right. You know, and time is of essence, and we're playing petty games. Are we going to trust the president, or shouldn't we trust the president? What guarantees we have that the president really means what he means and not what he thinks that he means? There's no time for these games. And what I understood from the people in the American administration was that they were looking at November 2020, the time that there are elections for president of the United States. They wanted to come prepared with a specific list of things to show that they have actually provided during the first term. And when they saw that the elections in Israel are not being determined after round one, number one, after round number two, they said to the two leading candidates, hey, you guys come here to DC. We want to tell you what our plan is. We suggest you cooperate. And if not, we're just carrying on. And you see that even after the election, when they saw that there wasn't a clear cut, the parties carried on sitting, drawing the maps. I think now with the coronavirus, they've slightly put it on hold. But even that, if we wouldn't have hesitated when we were in DC, we might have been already in a situation where Israeli law would have been implied over 30% of Judea and Samaria, because that's what was on the table.
Right. There's no from day one, from election number one, I think we both heard from officials in the White House about how frustrating it was for them that they weren't able to help us. They're trying to help us in terms of that annexation of the 30%, and not being able to, and not understanding why it is that we're dragging our feet and not being able to get somewhere. And it incredibly frustrated them, even though, like you said, they're our friends. They understand us. Sometimes they understand us a little better than we even understand ourselves. And they knew where it was coming from, and it's still incredibly frustrating. But that's the way it works here, and that's it. But you brought it up, and we have a couple more minutes. I want to focus on this. What happens in the next couple of months? Are we going to be looking at a Prime Minister Netanyahu again? Are we going to be looking at a Prime Minister Gantz? Are we looking at a unity government? Are we looking at a joint Arab list for the first time in the government? What happens? Tell us how you view it in 30 seconds or less. Yes or no question here.
Listen, we have an old saying that we believe in, that since the destruction of the temple, prophecy was given to three types of people that I don't want to be part of any three parts. Yeah. Nobody can tell you what's the answer. Things are so dynamic. Things are so messed up. Different leaders have climbed on such high trees that they don't know how to get off them. And we see the virus hitting everywhere. Israelis, Arabs, Jews, Muslims, Christians. It doesn't differentiate. And the government, not being a strong government, a functioning government that can make decisions, is not able to give proper answers to the challenges that we're all facing. So Prime Minister Netanyahu is trying to do his best. He's facing the beginning of a trial in May. There are people who are not willing to sit down with him because they're already convinced that he's been convicted, even though his trial hasn't even yet started. Those who don't want to sit with him haven't got their majority. So it will be very hard to tell at the moment where things are going. I'm not putting it beside any possibility that we'll face a fourth round of election. In order to avoid the fourth round of election, some sort of compromise need to be done by blue and white. Otherwise, Prime Minister Netanyahu will stay in office until the fourth round of election. Blue and white won't have a majority to actually vote for a government. And that's the situation in which we are tonight at 10:30. Tomorrow morning, we might be in a completely different scenario. And whoever watches this video will say they didn't know what they were talking about last night. And I'll have to say, you're right.
Right, 100%. Well, Mayor Revivi, Oded, it was great having you on, and I appreciate your insight and your perspective into letting us understand how life looks inside Yehuda v'Shamar, inside Efrat, and especially taking global issues and bringing them local. As they say, all politics are really local. So it's a real pleasure. For those of us that joined us, thank you for joining us. Tomorrow night we'll have Rabbi Jason Weiner, the lead chaplain of the Cedar Sinai Hospital Network in Los Angeles, with us. Mayor Revivi, thank you so very much for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you in person when this whole Mishugas is over. And have a good night, everybody. Shalom.
Thank you. Good night.